So to all the parents out there on Father's Day, if you regret having children, it's okay. And it's okay to talk about it. It doesn't mean that you don't like your children, that you don't love them, that you despise them or resent them. It just means that if you had the choice to do it otherwise, you would. That's all. And embracing that opinion might normalize the fact that a lot of people don't want kids anymore. Because right now, it's taboo to say that because there's also this social pressure for people to have kids. Which brings us back to, if you don't have kids, you're selfish. If we can normalize people saying, I regret having kids, because I'm sure a lot of people do regret or do believe, hey, what would have my life been had I not had kids? How different would it have been? If people have this freedom to ask these questions openly and publicly, perhaps it would be less of a taboo to not want kids. There was this rant that Bally and I kind of had to have this week. It's called having kids and the pressures for having kids, especially where I am, which is more of a conservative place. At least I feel like it's more conservative. The amount of pressure that we get to have kids is in Quebec in the 1950s. Women were kind of forced or very heavily socially pressured to have kids, which made it so that during the baby boom, families of 8, 10, 12 kids could be commonplace. And the reason for that is because the priests would knock on people's doors and ask and question wives as to why they're not pregnant. Because Catholic priests here not only saw it as a Catholic duty to populate, but they also saw it as as demographic power to populate Catholic children. So the more population there is, and the more, if they're Catholic, the more power the Catholic Church has. So this strategy, which wasn't a bad strategy, to populate as strongly as possible, to have a demographic weight in the country and in the province, was a good strategy, but it made it so that women were basically just pumping out babies and had no other roles in society except for doing that. And it's one of the reasons why Quebec was one of the latest, if not the last, province in Canada to allow women to vote. And there are still some fragments of that history that permeate in our culture. And I believe this and it might not be just in our culture, because I imagine it might be everywhere. And I'd like to hear some of your thoughts in chat about how if you get pressured into having babies or not. But here, people, when you say you don't want children, an argument I've heard a couple of times, not just once, not just twice, a couple of times, is you're selfish for not wanting kids, which I find that it's such a strange argument, because it's not an argument it's not like a positive argument. I don't mind if someone says, oh, well, having a child is like a miracle and it will change your life. Like, that's fine, because it's probably true. Yeah, having a child probably does change your life. Or saying that, oh, I've had children and it really changed me as a person and I feel like I'm a better person, blah, blah, blah. That's also fine. Go ahead. Tell me, like, you can say that. There's some arguments that are a bit more sad, that make me kind of sad, is the argument of, well, if I didn't have children, like, I don't know what I would be doing. I'd be working and then going home, and what would I do home if I didn't have to take care of my children? And that argument is also, I feel like, is pretty sad. The reason why I think that argument is sad is because these people, it's often women, spend their lives taking care of their children and make it their duty, which is completely fine, by the way. But when their children are of age, when they leave the house, they hit a wall. And if their whole purpose was to take care of their children and they don't have children anymore, they don't know what to do. And I've seen it firsthand of people making it their life mission to take care of their children, and they love them a lot, and that's really good. But if that's the only thing you have, or the only thing that consumes you, because it's very, very time and energy consuming, then you hit a wall after, and you don't know what to do. You haven't developed any interest or any passion for yourself because you were so dedicated to your children. You never put yourself first. And now when it's time to put yourself first, it's kind of too late to develop a personality outside of your kids. Oh yeah, Krenna, if you don't have kids, who will take care of you when you're old? If you hear that from your parents, it often means, hey, you're gonna take care of me when I'm old, right? Right? Please. Imagine having kids. Yeah, exactly. Imagine having kids so that they can take care of you when you're old, and saying it's selfish to not have kids, as if it was an investment. WGTA, whose first time chatter, very happy to see you, says, selfish or immature are most common arguments here. Even a lot of young families see this as a duty, or just as marriage it is something that you just have to do eventually. Yeah, I'll come back to that later. It's a really good point, because it does feed into another problem I find with how people see stages in life, right? Yeah, selfish or immature is also something. Immature, I haven't heard it that much. I've heard, oh, don't worry, you'll change your mind when you get older. Oh, don't worry, you'll see. Once you get older, you'll change your mind. You'll grow out of it, or something like that, which is very patronizing. I usually go, well, maybe I will change my mind. How the fuck do I know? But it's kind of patronizing to say, oh, right now, you don't know what you actually want. You'll see when you get older. You'll want kids. Because if I want kids in the future, I feel like it will be a very irrational choice. The reason why I think it would be an irrational choice is because rationally, I feel like having kids is not worth it. For my situation. For other people's situation, it might be different. But for me, I feel like if I ever were to have kids, it would be from a need for like, I don't know, for like a purpose in life, which I haven't found, or like to fill a void in my life, which I feel like I need to fill with purpose. Because in terms of economics, like financially, it's a bad decision. Socially, it's the kind of decision that makes you that alienates you from a community. It can create bonds with the community in the sense that if they can, or if they want, or if they have the time and energy to help you, then you can create friendships through it, or you can strengthen friendships through it. I've strengthened some friendships with people through helping them out with their baby, which is really nice. But at the same time, the same people who have this baby and whose friendship I strengthened through helping them out with the baby, who I really, really love, also have to sacrifice so much of their social outings and participating in community events and stuff like that because they have to take care of the baby. So socially, financially, it's an issue. I don't have the issue of not having space enough in my house, but if you live in the city where things are more expensive, you have to find a bigger apartment, right? You have to find an extra bedroom, perhaps. Having a 3.5 or a 1-bedroom apartment might not be enough anymore. So it's things like that. Food prices are more expensive, but from what I understand, at least from taking care of the baby I was talking about earlier, babies don't cost that much in terms of food. Like there's diapers, there's other costs, but in terms of food, it's not too bad. And Pyroanarchist says, you can also say that it is selfish to have kids when the future looks this bleak because of climate change. Yeah, and it's not just climate change. There's a lot of things to look forward to that are kind of very very bleak. Climate change is perhaps one of the biggest ones, but there's going to be a lot of political and social changes, or political and social challenges in the future, which are not going to be fun to address and to answer. Halitosis has themselves kids, and they say, I've never encouraged my kids to have kids. I would love grandkids, but the state of humanity, I feel like it's contributing to the suffering. There you go. Someone else pretty much agreeing with what Pyranicus were saying earlier. Apple of Newton, first time chatter. Welcome, Apple of Newton. Very glad to see you in chat. Says, I actually argued against the compulsion of marriage in my class, but the reaction I received, terrifying. If I may ask you to dox yourself in chat, can you tell me where you're from? Are you from a more conservative area? Because here marriage is not that popular. Far from it. It's more of a luxury. Yeah, you're from India. And compulsion of marriage, you mean like forced marriage, or like, like socially pressuring marriage? Because forced marriage is another thing as well. Connor Core says, I had two Shih Tzu dogs for 13 years. We were so codependent, I couldn't leave them for any length of time, to the point I'm now almost a shut-in. I thought you said, instead of saying to the point I'm now a shut-in, I thought you said to the point I'm now almost a Shih Tzu. I mean, maybe you are a Shih Tzu or almost a Shih Tzu. Connor Core says, if I'd had kids, I'd have been 10,000% worse. Yeah, that's the thing. The social shut in is a good word for it. You pay a heavy social. You can pay a heavy social price to having kids. Apple of Newton says, the place I live, there's literally a custom that exists where the groom gets abducted and forced to marry, with a crying, laughing emoji. Marjorie says, bruh. I mean, it's not funny. But if it's their culture, if it's your culture, who am I to say that it's wrong? That's a joke. That's a joke for those who don't know if I'm serious or not. I'm sarcastic. There you go. Connor Core confirming the rumor that he might be a Shih Tzu, or they might be a Shih Tzu. It's confirmed. I'm sorry, Apple of Newton, that you have to go through that. At least you have the privilege of being able to argue against it, and you haven't been completely brainwashed into thinking that it's fine. Lenore says, there was no sarcasm warning. How are we supposed to know if you're joking? It's going to be a 50-50 chance this stream. Usually I have like a little sarcasm thing to let y'all know that I'm doing sarcasm. But today, you're going to have to guess. And you know what? Maybe I'm sarcastic the whole stream. And if I am, you'll just have to assume that and laugh. Coin toss to determine exactly. If I say, I'm not a fascist, you'll just have to guess. Coin toss, 50-50. Lies. All right. But to go back to the main argument I wanted to address, the fact that it's selfish to not have kids. The reason why I think it's more pernicious than any other arguments is because it's aimed at shaming people into having kids. And the whole idea of shaming people into having kids is the same kind of social pressure that I would see happening in 1950s Quebec with priests and the Catholic Church. And shaming people into having kids, not only is it disgusting, but imagine you have kids because you feel like people might judge you for not having kids. That's the worst reason why you should have kids. What if other people think I'm selfish for not having kids? Oh, we better have kids then. We better make our lives taxed socially, financially, just so that people don't think I'm selfish. Hey, look, And it's been a problem. This has been a problem for a very long time. The whole idea that people have been pressured into having kids. It's fine if some people do actually want kids, and that's completely fine. But a lot of people are pressured into having them. Here, we're reading Emma Goldman again. We love Emma Goldman. Here, reading Emma Goldman for 2 seconds. You know, just here. That was written in 1911, I believe. That's it's on women voting, which I have a segment about on Germinal. By refusing to bear her children unless she wants them. Yeah, that's it. Like, it's okay to refuse to bear children unless you want them. And she says just before, if I remember correctly, to free herself of the social pressures that women are often put through. There you go. By freeing herself from the fear of public opinion and public condemnation. And this regulation through public opinion and public condemnation of women's choices is extremely pernicious and has a long history, and it's sad that it's still happening. And the interesting thing is, I've been told that I'd be selfish if I didn't have kids, but I wasn't told that as much as ballet has, because ballet is in their appearance like a woman, and the fact that women or women passing people, I guess, get that kind of comment and not me is telling. And even more interesting is that those comments only came from one gender, at least so far. And it's other women. No men have said, "Hey, if you don't have kids, you would be selfish." No men would ever say that, probably because it would be considered misogynistic. If a guy went to a woman and said, "Hey, you should have kids. If you don't have kids, it's misogynistic." Or if you, through that conversation, and not misogynistic, it's selfish. And that conversation would be unexcusable and intolerable. But when it comes from a woman who says if it's selfish, then it's fine. It's not considered misogynistic. Yet it still is. It still is to say, because you're not only giving like a harmless opinion. What you're doing is trying to shame someone into making a choice that they don't actually want to do. Because if you say, "Hey, if you don't have children, you're being selfish," then that means you don't want you don't want children, you don't want kids. And using shame, using public opinion, public condemnation to force a woman to do something she doesn't want to do, and commit her whole life to a being she in the first place didn't even want to have, is really fucked up and has misogynistic tendencies. Halitosis, who are themselves say raising children is doing a lot of social labor. The value of parents is almost immeasurable to capitalism, but capitalism hates social labor and won't even compensate it. Yeah, absolutely. It's that's something that actually has been written on, I believe, by Marx himself. The whole idea that, if I remember correctly, because that goes back to like my university classes on Marx, and it could have been another Marxist thinker, but the whole idea that there's a lot of labor that's put into just keeping humans alive, and that this labor is not compensated, and is kind of given freely to capitalists because they need that labor, is part of the Marxist critique. Apple of Newton says, "Can you explain the reasoning behind the argument of being selfish for not having kids? I don't get it how it could be." Yeah, good Good question. Maybe I should add that because this is going to be a segment. So usually when people say you're being selfish for not having kids, it's because when you say, I don't want kids, what they hear is, I'm putting myself first. I'm putting my passions, my interests, my goals. I'm putting my purpose not in someone else, but in myself. I'm putting my purpose not in sacrificing myself for another being, but I'm putting my purpose in developing my own individuality, in developing who I want to be, and maximizing my potential as a human person, as a human being, and doing it for myself, not for someone else. And that does sound selfish, and maybe it is, but I think it's fine. I think it's completely fine to say I want to focus on myself, and I don't want to do it for someone else. And some people may have kids and still be able to focus on themselves fully and like develop to their to their maximum potential. But if someone doesn't want kids to really focus on that, it should be fine, and it shouldn't be considered selfish, right? Time and energy is so scarce nowadays. Someone who says, I want that time and energy for myself and for my development, not for the development and for the life of someone else. People see that as selfish. Very often, and that's me being, we're going to armchair psychologize the people who say that. I believe that someone who says that is someone who regrets having children. Someone who says you're selfish for not having children. Is someone who is betraying what they're saying or what they're thinking. It's someone who's betraying what they're thinking and saying, why don't you suffer like I did? I did my duty as a mother to sacrifice so many things to create another human being, and you're not willing to do that sacrifice. That I had to go through it. I mean, perhaps they were pressured into it. Perhaps they didn't even think that it was an option to say no, to not have kids. Perhaps they didn't even think it was possible to not have kids. So they had some, and they sacrificed a lot. They did sacrifice a lot. Parents sacrifice a whole bunch to raise up kids. However, it's not because they suffered that everyone else has to suffer, or because they had to sacrifice stuff that other people have to sacrifice. And they find it selfish that other people are not willing to sacrifice the way they had to sacrifice stuff themselves. There is this very taboo, it's a funny word, taboo. There's this very taboo concept, which is maternal regret. In French, there's this lady who wrote a book about it. It's really, really interesting, but there's the fact that regretting having children, it's usually maternal taboo, but it could be parental taboo, I guess. The idea that you regret having children, it's such a taboo thing because people equate it to not wanting or not loving your child. Saying, I regret having children is okay to say. If you say, hey, I regret having children, I feel like it took too much time, too much energy off of my personal development. All my free time was spent on that being, and I feel like I didn't give myself enough time to grow as a person. It doesn't mean that you hate your child or that you despise them or that you resent them. It just means that had you had the choice, if you had the choice to go back, you just would spend more time on yourself instead of raising a child. It's not, a lot of people equate it to, this child wasn't worth it. Look at how pathetic they are now. All this effort that I put, and look at them now. It's not about the child. It's about the parent's feeling. And perhaps one of the reasons why it's taboo is because often in a parental relationship, we could say, the child's needs and the child's go first. You know, the child's needs and its emotions, its feelings, they always go first on top of the parent. which in some cases is justifiable because the child is very vulnerable and is dependent on the parent. However, the parents also have needs and also have feelings which are completely valid as well. And saying, hey, listen, I fucked up by having children and I regret having them because I could have done so much better had I not had them as a financial and social burden and personal growth burden. A lot of parents don't want to say that. Maybe they feel it, and maybe they don't even want to accept it to accept it themselves that they feel that way. So to all the parents out there on Father's Day, if you regret having children, it's okay, and it's okay to talk about it. It doesn't mean that you don't like your children, that you don't love them, that you despise them or resent them. It just means that if you had the choice to do it otherwise, you would. That's all. And embracing that opinion might normalize the fact that a lot of people don't want kids anymore. Because right now, it's taboo to say that because there's also this social pressure for people to have kids. Which brings us back to, if you don't have kids, you're selfish. If we can normalize people saying, I regret having kids, because I'm sure a lot of people do regret or do believe, hey, what would have my life been had I not had kids? How different would it have been? If people have this freedom to ask these questions openly and publicly, perhaps it would be less of a taboo to not want kids. Yeah, WGTA. We had it hard. You have to have it hard as well. That remember when there was this planet. I don't even know if it went through because I'm not American. I don't give a fuck. But this whole idea that all right, student debt or student loan needs to remain because I had to pay my student loans, my student debts. Isn't that a weird argument? Because the kind of argument that prevents any social social bettering. All right, because I had to pay my loans. Now everyone in the future of humanity need to pay their loans. I had to pay for healthcare, so now everyone in the future of humanity needs to pay for their healthcare. Oh, people want to make food free because we kind of rely on it to survive. No, I had to pay food for 20 years of my life, so fuck you. Food will keep being commodified. It's like it's always preventing social betterment. Yeah, Marjorie, it's not the it's not the whole point of progress. Like, isn't that the whole point of progress? The idea that people are going to have advantages over people from before? Don't we want people in the future to have better advantages and better conditions than the people prior to them? Isn't that what we want? Isn't that what people have been striving for centuries, millennia? I had that same issue last stream. For all of humanity, people want to make the next generation better off than themselves. And for one of the very rare times in the history of humanity, we have people who say, right, well, they can't have it better than us. Right? Because that would be unfair if people from the next generations are going to have it better than us. That would be unfair. They have to suffer as much as we have. God damn it. But not when I say people, it's not most people. It's conservatives, the people who want it to go back to tradition. The people who want things to not change and stay as miserable as they always were. All those people died because of asbestos in their house, and you want to live in a house without asbestos? We had to breathe it in every single day. And you mean to not, you don't want to breathe it? That's unfair. Why would you get to live longer than I have? Marjorie says, my boss started complaining because the employees stopped wanting to work with powdered enamel because it causes cancer. Sorry, I don't want to ruin my health. Maybe your boss worked all his life with powdered enamel and said, look, I'm completely fine, don't worry about it. And like, these people putting their not putting their health at risk for the needs of capital. So selfish. I was right. Marjorie saying her argument was that she used to do it. There you go. Now I want to go back to WGTA. Yeah, who asked earlier, selfish or immature are most common arguments here about not wanting kids. Even a lot of young families see this as a duty, or just as marriage it is something that you just have to do eventually. I love the idea of duty here in your comment, because that's the thing. Like when if you're selfish, it's like selfish to who, and it's to a broader duty, right? Like if I'm being criticized for being selfish, it means that I'm failing someone, but I'm not, because that person is not alive. So I'm just failing a duty, like a social duty to have kids and procreate. But interesting in your argument, in your comment as well, is that you said just as marriage, it is something that you just have to do eventually, and we don't have that pressure for marriage anymore here in where I live, or at least in my social circle. But the whole idea that you have like some stages in life, and that you're following those stages and you're kind of doing it like automatically with your brain off, is very harmful and makes it so that people are not necessarily critical of what they actually want in life, right? So you're a bebe, you don't really know what's going on, you go to school, and then, all right, now your goals in life is to finish whatever like current school year you're in, right? First grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, blah, blah, blah. And then you're about to graduate high school. Where I am, it's 17 years old. So you graduate high school, and graduating high school is like one of the biggest first steps about, in your life. It's like a milestone. And this milestone conception of life is what I'm arguing against here. So you go through milestones, and because those are milestones that are socially determined, very often we don't even criticize these milestones. And these milestones may vary from culture to culture and from background to background. For example, because let me casually flex that I came from a more let's say privileged background, and because of that, the milestone after high school was to go to college. All right, so what do we do after high school? You can't explore for yourself, right? The milestone, you already know what the next milestone is. You don't even criticize it because it's just socially established that the next milestone is to finish college. So you go to college, but now you get to choose what you want to do. And then you explore. You might do one program and finish it. You might do a couple of them. You might do a couple of colleges, as I did. I did 3 of them in 3 different programs. Marjorie said, Cégep is kind of an obligation socially. Depends where you are. You gotta make Marjorie check their privilege. I don't know your situation, Marjorie. At least where I am in Gaspésie, if you graduate high school, it's already good. In many places, going to college is kind of a social obligation. It was for me. Going to uni is a social obligation for me. But that's because of my background. In a lot of places, it's already like a pretty big achievement to finish high school. Connor Course says, yes, I had obligations to finish high school and uni from my fam in the 90s. Yeah. But very often as well, those it's not necessarily like an obligatory milestone. It's like a socially enforced milestone. Everyone's doing it, right? It's not even like a question that you ask. All right, so I'm going to Cégep, which is college. I'm going to college. Everyone is. I don't really know what to go into because I don't really know anything. At least Cégep, or college here in Quebec, is pretty cheap. So that's why I had the opportunity to go into 3 different programs and 3 different colleges. And then, all right, I'm experimenting, I'm seeing. And then after that, I dropped out of the milestone model in college because I had the opportunity to explore, and through exploration I realized like this model of always advancing to the next milestone is not going to work for me. I'm not going to be very happy with it. If I had followed the milestone model, so I would have finished college as fast as possible by picking one program and sticking to it and not changing, and then I would have went into university picking a program and sticking to it. So once I'm done college, great, next milestone. All right, uni, next milestone. All right, now I'm out of uni. The next milestone is to find a job, right? I find a job, and then I don't. All right, I did my milestone. I got a job. What's next? Is the next milestone really my retirement in like 30 years? Maybe even more? 25, 30, 35 years? Is that the next milestone in my life? Well, no, because that's like your career milestone. But there's also a branch, another milestone branch that you can then focus on. You have the social milestone, the one where, all right, now this milestone is about finding a partner, a girlfriend, boyfriend, or a non-binary cutie. And during like those milestones, it's not necessarily after you have a job, right? It can be during college, it can be during uni. So in the social milestone, you have finding a cutie to be partnered up with. And then the next milestone within that branch is to move in with that person. And then when you move in with that person, the next milestone is maybe having, maybe for some people, buying a house or getting married, right? And that can come later with the parallel milestone, which is getting a job. And one of the reasons why I believe that perhaps finding like breakups are really, really hard is because you're going back on that milestone and you're losing so much of that progress, right? Now you're like, oh fuck, this didn't work out. So now I have to meet someone new. I need to develop, feelings, relationships, like a complicity, and then eventually move in together, and then eventually maybe marry. And then the next milestone after getting married, or it can be interchangeable, is having kids. And all these milestones that are socially enforced, like the milestone model, a lot of people just follow it subconsciously, right? Without necessarily putting it under a critical lens. And I think that this is an issue. And I think that a lot of people who have kids because it's just part of a milestone, right? It's part of the many different steps into just having a life, because that's how people live their lives. That's what people do, right? And when you say this milestone, I don't really want it because I want to do other things, it's like betraying the model that these people have been following for so long. And when you betray that model, people are kind of faced with the fact that they didn't really have to follow it. And maybe they're very happy with the fact that they followed it. Maybe they're very happy with it, but thinking that you might have had a choice and you could have decided for yourself if you wanted to follow that model or not can be confronting. And that brings us back to, you don't want kids? Wait, you're not following the model that I followed without really thinking about it? Hold on, wait, there's something wrong with you. It must be something wrong with you. You must be spin the wheel. Selfish. That's what you must be. Very, 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 very bad. Marjorie, I had a discussion with their philosophy teacher about Careerism, which means not professionalism. Careerism. Is careerism something? If it's not, it is today. Careerism, yeah. The whole idea that everything is surrounded around your whole model of life is surrounded around the career. Your whole identity is surrounded on your career. And everything that you do has to contribute to your career. I feel like careerism, it was very, very, very prevalent in older generations. It's becoming less and less of less and less something. But yeah, a lot of people still today, I think most people, maybe 90% of the people who go to high school, college, university, they do it for their career with an end goal in mind. And it's not the knowledge in themselves in itself that they're seeking, but it's the carrot at the end, which is apparently the opportunity to give someone else profits while doing what you studied. The great opportunity of generating profits for someone else through the thing that you had passion for, but that you'll lose passion for because it will be so restricted by the market pressures that it'll just become a job. It'll just become a job. Is that how we end the segment?